Testing sound in the hallway.
Artec ODT can provide relief in 2 hours, which can last up to 2 days.
Don't take if allergics in Nurtec ODT. Allergic reactions can occur even days after use. Get help right away for trouble breathing, rash, swelling of face, mouth, tongue, or throat. High blood pressure and the nose syndrome can occur. Get help for high blood pressure, numbness, coolness, pain, or color changes in fingers and toes. Common side effect is nausea. Ask your doctor about Nurtec ODT. Okay. Oh, it's fine. Thanks. Leaky refrigerator coil pod. Oh, Dad of an HP fan motor. Your future is bright with an American Home Shield warranty. Protect your covered appliances and home systems. Are there bees behind me? They only talked about this. American Home Shield. Don't worry, be warranty.
Well, at first, we thought she was just putting on the mood. When we realized what was happening, I was hard to believe he was scared. And the bigger it got, the less she wanted to go. And she never really felt all that sentimental at night. He couldn't breathe. Because she was touching the light. Well, I called 911. I thought she was like the right thing to do.
You know, the right thing to do would have been to call your home.
Okay, Mr. Levinsky. I'm gonna get you more comfortable, okay? I'm gonna go downstairs and I'll be back actually. Okay.
Kimmy, you might want to mute yourself.
It seems to like you, besides the bonds. Inside, I'm so tired. There is the century. I'm going to talk about. The document put the grant there. Your candidate ideas is the front of it.
Mic check 1, 2, 3.
Mic check confirmed.
think their hands are raised. All right, so I want to, before we convene the budget meeting tonight, I just want to make a brief statement on two separate topics. First, regarding the appointment of the Budget Committee Chair, as you may know, Council approved updated bylaws for city boards and committee on April 28th, primarily to standardize them. Those updated bylaws will take effect on January 1st. One of the updates is that the mayor will serve as chair and the council president will serve as vice chair of the Budget Committee. That is consistent with common practice in many Oregon cities. Because Kelly was stepping down as chair, the committee needed to appoint a new chair for the remainder of the year. Councilor Schlack made a motion to appoint me, and the committee approved that motion, so that's why I'm presiding in that role right now. Second, I want to acknowledge the feedback we received regarding public comment at the last Budget Committee meeting. Some people appreciated the effort to keep the meeting on schedule and respect everybody's time, while others will have preferred more time for testimony. I understand both perspectives. Looking back, I also understand why some people felt frustrated by how that first meeting went. This is a new Budget Committee format. This is my first time presiding over the Budget Committee, and this is also a very difficult budget year. At the first meeting, we had a full agenda and a scheduled public comment period of 10 minutes. My goal was to balance the opportunity for public participation with the Budget Committee's responsibility to complete its work in a timely and orderly manner. Those who have seen me preside over meetings know that I try to run a tight meeting and stick to the schedule. Meeting participants, which include council members, staff, invited guests, and in this case, Budget Committee members, often come to these evening meetings after a full day of work. I believe it is important to respect everybody's time and maintain a predictable schedule while still preserving meaningful opportunity for public input. Having said that, tonight we have scheduled 20 minutes, which is 10 minutes more, for public comments to provide additional opportunity for testimony. There's also at least one additional Budget Committee meeting scheduled next week and one tentative meeting the week after if needed. If there is significant demand for more in-person comment, we will do our best to make room within the schedule. I also want to reiterate that written public comments are provided to the Budget Committee, read, and made available to the public. Public comments can take more than one form, and both spoken and written comments are part of the record and part of this process. Tonight, I do not yet know how many people have signed up, but I want everyone to be mindful of the 20 minutes public comment period. If you come as a part of a group and would like to allocate your time among one another so we can stay on schedule, please feel free to do that right now. Public input is important, and I appreciate everyone who has taken the time to participate in this process. So for those of you joining virtually, please remember to turn on your mic when speaking and mute your mic after you are finished. I may go around and ask each of you if you have any questions or comments prior to the conclusion of each section of the agenda. At Budget Committee meetings, we'll be following Robert's Rule of Order. Robert's Rules of Order is the standard set of rules to run orderly meetings. The team will capturing all our comments, questions, and requests for follow-up information if necessary. Public comment has been scheduled for 6:10 p.m. Please make sure that you have signed in to be called up on. Individuals wishing to provide public comments should plan to speak for no more than 2 minutes. If there are a large number of speakers, the chair may reduce the time per speaker to 1 minute and may limit the number of speakers in order to allow as many people as possible an opportunity to be heard. The deadline for written testimony and registration for video testimony was 12 p.m. on Thursday, May 7. Budget Committee meetings will be following the same public comment protocol as City Council meetings. So now the City of Tiger Budget Committee now is reconvened. Today's goal is to hear more information on the fiscal year 2026 to 27 proposed City of Tiger budget. Let's start by asking Committee Secretary Aaron McCoo to conduct our roll call. Aaron, are you online? If not, I will ask Councillor
Hello,
Schlack to conduct a roll
Mayor.
call, please.
I am online.
Will you be able to conduct roll call, or would you prefer Councillor Schlack do that?
If Councillor Schlack can do that, I don't have a list of the expected.
All right,
names.
thank you. Councillor Schlack, would you please conduct roll call?
Of course. Aaron McCool.
Here.
Ethan Postrel.
Here.
Derek Lawson.
Here.
Kelly Pement.
Here.
Bill Lewis.
Here.
Youssef Alouzi.
Here.
Jeff Darland.
Here.
Mayor Hu.
Here.
Council President Wolf.
Here.
Councilor Gadusi.
Present.
Councilor Robbins.
Here.
Councilor Schlack is here. Councilor Shaw. Councilor Anderson. Youth Councilor Hellick. 13 present, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schlack. Let's move on to approval minutes from the May 4, 2026 meeting. Copies of the summary minutes from the May 4, 2026 meetings have been provided to you electronically in advance of the meeting. Are there any addition or change to the summary minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. This is Ethan Postrel. I do have one comment on the minutes, specifically on one of the notes about one of the questions I had asked. I'm looking at section 10, which was the discussion on the library presentation of budget. It's the 8th bullet down, and the minutes here state that I had asked for specific recommendation on what could be cut at the library instead of the proposed reductions. What I actually intended to convey with that comment was a recommendation for commenters to propose what cuts to departments other than the library could be made to offset the reductions that were proposed at the library. So I just wanted to clarify that in the minutes, and also noting that that also applies to question 3 on the Q&A.
So would you like to make a motion to approve the minute with your requested change?
Yes, sir. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes with that requested change.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, those approved say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Hearing none, the minute motion is adopted by a unanimous vote of the Budget Committee present. All right, so let's move on to public comment. At Budget Committee meetings, we follow the same public comment protocol as the City Council meeting. The protocol can be found on the city website and on the PowerPoint slide for this meeting. As a summary, remarks should be addressed to the Budget Committee as a body rather than direct to any particular member. Personal attacks or threats, disruption of the meeting, use of obscene, vulgar, or discriminatory language, or in any way discouraging anyone else from participating are not acceptable. The mayor or presiding officer may interrupt members of the public speaking to Budget Committee if they are not following public comment protocol, and the mayor and Budget Committee will enforce this rule uniformly and treat all perspectives and opinions consistently. If you wish to virtually provide testimony, please join the queue by raising your hands on the Microsoft Teams. A caller can use the *5 to raise lower hands and use either the phone microphone button or *6 to mute and mute. Please state your name for the record. Please speak directly into the microphone and limit your comment to 2 minutes or 1 minute, depending on how many people sign up to speak. Budget Manager James Kennedy has collected the written testimony that has come to the city prior to 12 p.m. on Thursday, May 7th, and has provided a public comment to the Budget Committee ahead of this meeting. Budget Manager Kennedy, I will wait until we do the in-person. All right, so we have 9 people sign up. Anybody's signing up online? Who's the? Anybody sign up online? No one signed up. Okay, so since we have enough time for everybody to speak 2 minutes, I will. Everybody who signed up will have 2 minutes to provide public testimony this evening. So would you please put a 2-minute timer on the screen? And I will invite the first person, Gabe Stone, to come speak. If not, I can time 2 minutes. All right, Gabe, please start.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and Budget Committee. My name is Gabe Stone. I'm the current president of the Tigard Police Officers Association. I wanted to address some of the recommendations by the Budget Committee from the May 4th meeting, where an opinion was raised regarding the hope to examine the police budget for additional cuts. I'd like to remind Council and our community that our staffing is already down. We had more officers in 2011 than we do today. Think about how much the city has grown in the last 15 years. We still only have 3 officers to cover day shift. That's 3 officers from Bridgeport Village to River Terrace. The city has not been able to raise officer minimums. In addition, the city of Tigard has continually added resource-consuming projects to the police plate, including homeless shelters, high-density housing, and expanding subdivisions, and a lot of additional workloads on other areas of growing population. The police department is a core service for the city that does not have the luxury to adjust operational hours or delay schedule maintenance or adjust staffing or budget. We are always required to be ready. Any cuts to the police department will have a direct impact on the people who live here, including diminished quality of service and longer response times. Thank you very much for your thoughtful consideration in this process.
Thank you. Still no timer on the screen, can we? Okay, I will keep timing people. Next, I would like to invite Micah Newsom. Hi, good evening. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Micah Newsom, and I'm here to speak about the library. 6 months ago today, Tigard residents voted to support an increase to the levy funding libraries in Washington County. They voluntarily took on that additional tax burden because they believe in the value that the library provides. Today, the city presents a budget proposal that directly contradicts the will of those voters. This budget reduces the amount the city contributes to library funding by more than $2.1 million, a decrease of over 37%, even as WCCLS funding increases by nearly $215,000. The entire projected decrease in general fund revenue is only a little over $2.2 million, barely more than the cuts to the library. The majority of that is due to decreased fund balance. The actual decrease in revenue is just over $40,000. Cuts to the library are 50 times that amount. These vastly disproportionate cuts to the library, immediately on the heels of voter approval for strong library funding, are ridiculous and unsupported. The city's choice to redirect funds to pursue priorities not approved by the voters begs the question, why should Tigard voters approve any additional bonds or levies until the city shows it will respect their wishes? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next I would like to invite Graham Starr. Hello, Graham.
Hello. All right. Thank you for having me and giving me
Mike, turn on the mic, please. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Graham Starr. I'm a resident of King City. Tigard Library is kind of my home library. And so I'm grateful that for all the discussion last week that's kind of like looking for avenues to address the funding situation for the library. I hope that if the council has not already had the chance to review the budget proposals that the acting city manager mentioned last week that was asked to be produced by all of the department heads, that they are given that option when we're kind of looking for where the funding could potentially come from. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you, Graham. Next speaker I would like to invite is Anna DeHolt. Hi, Anna.
I am Anna Daunt, and I have brought a group of fellow teenagers with me to speak on how we believe library budgets should not be cut. Give me 60 seconds of your day, and I'll explain why library teen services are important. The City of Tigard plans to do a 20% budget cut on the Tigard Public Library. The public library offers much more than free books. Libraries are often a safe haven for teenagers, a space to study outside of school hours, and a space to be around friends without having to spend money. Kids are constantly being robbed of spaces to go in public without paying, making teens retreat from society to the internet. Leaving your house and spending time with friends in real life is incredibly important to mental health. Removing budget from spaces for teens to meet contributes to the mental health crisis in America. For others, the public library is an escape from an uncomfortable home life. The Tigard Public Library has a teen space that not only provides a comfy lounge for teens, but also basic needs, such as free soap, shampoo, snacks, feminine product, toothbrushes, and toothpaste. It's important to protect the spaces that protect our youth. The teen librarian position, the part-time teen library position has been removed, and the teen library position has had 8 hours a week removed from her position. That's 20% less time for her to be working and making a difference. We need to support our youth so they can grow and be the best people they can be. We are the future of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Next person I would like to invite is Jenny Stovall. Hello, Jenny.
Hello, me again. Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. My name is Jenny Stoffel, and I serve as the Vice Chair of the Tigard Public Library Board. I endorse the police levy and the voters pamphlet because I believe the police badly need better facilities to base operations out of. And I also deeply value Tigard's parks and recreational opportunities. But I'm here rather than kayaking out of Cook Park tonight because I believe that the budget before us here and now, equitable financial support that does not disproportionately hamstring a single area of service, as these proposed library cuts would, best serves the dignity of all Tigard residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, next person I would like to invite is Miguel Valencia. Hello, Miguel.
Good evening. My name is Miguel Valencia. I'm a resident of Tigard. I've been living here since 2014, and I've been going to the Tigard Public Library since then as well. I was in school throughout the pandemic, and the Tigard Library was one of the first places I was able to go as someone who had an immunocompromised family member living at home. And honestly, a $2 million decrease in the budget feels like a slap in the face, because I and so many people that I know rely on the library for services that they provide every single day. And I am one of the people that voted in favor of the library levy that was proposed in November. And it really stinks. I feel like services, especially like the social services coordinator, are extremely important for the general Tigard community, and that they provide nothing but public good that really should be one of the things that we focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Our next person is Harriet Hattie. Yeah. All right. Hello. Be careful.
Great start. Hello, Council. Thank you very much for having me today. And I just want to say thank you for the increase of time. I'm also here to share about the library, and I'm going to make a lot of similar points to my friend Anna about how it is very essential for people, especially teenagers, to have this safe space. It is an amazing resource for people who need stuff like sanitary products or food. They have like a little like station for that specifically. It is also important for there to be like a social area for teenagers to connect and talk to each other, and as well as the amazing resources that they supply, the library that is, so that teenagers do not end up in dangerous spaces like online servers where they can meet anyone and can fall into more dangerous projects, to more dangerous practices like self-harm or drug use. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next person I would like to invite is Owen Killingsworth. Hello, Owen.
Good evening. Thanks to all for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Owen Killingsworth. I've lived in Tigard since 2005. I've been a homeowner here since 2009. I have 2 middle school age children who attend Tigard-Tualatin School District. When I first moved to Tigard, it was immediately obvious the library here is amazing. I'm filled with civic pride every time I drive by. It's been an invaluable resource for me and my family when I was a starving student many years ago. And since my children have been growing up, we've gone there often. But even more so, I think it's more valuable for the most vulnerable people in our community, and that's really important. Money spent in our library, to me, it's an investment in our future and highly appropriate. I'm also here to say that it's an uncomfortable truth that people are hesitant to be outwardly critical of law enforcement out of very reasonable fear of retribution due to the outsized power that people wield. Honestly, Tigard is so safe. I've lived in a lot of places on the West Coast, and the police don't want their budget cut. To me, just doesn't pass the smell test, not even close. I'm here basically to demand that, given our budget shortfall, that the council here find money by cutting the police budget, not the library budget. It's not even close. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Owen. And I will invite Megan Cohen. Megan?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Megan Cohen. I work for the City of Tigard, but I'm here tonight as a community member to provide comment on the proposed budget. I know that you all understand how hard things are for our Tigard community members in this moment. Compounded at the same time, we've seen cuts to resources such as rent assistance and a lack of emergency options. Tigard has always been a place that values ensuring safety and connection for our community members that are the most vulnerable, and right now is the time to continue to invest in what we want to see. I know it's not realistic to think the city will be able to solve the funding issues around rent assistance or build affordable housing fast enough, but we can ensure that folks get connected to the services that exist as quickly as possible to reduce the trauma of long-term ongoing homelessness and poverty. We can ensure that folks understand how to navigate a system that has become increasingly complex. We can support our service partners through partnership and collaboration. This is happening through the library social services position. Without it, people will lose that connection to services and be left in a position to wait much longer than they would without it. I'm a dedicated library patron and mom to a 3-year-old that's already anticipating the start of summer reading at the Tigard Library. We enjoy the library because it's one of those rare spaces that's still free, accessible, and filled with awesome human beings. It's a trauma-informed space because you have the staff expertise to make it so. From pantries to shelter to outreach, we have excellent social services in Tigard. It's more important than ever that we help people find those social services, offset their costs, avoid services that could put them at risk. This will decrease costs in terms of avoiding emergency services and crisis services down the line, reducing the number of folks that end up camping outside, and increase community well-being in Tigard. This is the Tigard I know and love. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Megan. I just want to make sure there's nobody online wanting to testify. Can you confirm? Mr. Miller? Well, hearing none, let's move on. So I would like to thank everybody who show up and to testify in person. So that's so Budget Manager Kennedy, as I mentioned, we have collected some written comments. So would you please provide a summary of the written comments?
Yes, good evening all. So we received a total of 16 public comments between 12 p.m. on Thursday, April 30th, and 12 p.m. on Thursday, May 7th. The majority, 15 of them, were related to the proposed 2027 library budget cuts, while the additional comment focused on fiscal sustainability and prioritizing core services.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next section, I just want to thank all the community members again for submitting either written comment or be here in person. Any additional public testimony or question that don't get answered today can be submitted for public comments at our next meeting on May 18th. And we will consider the testimony during deliberations this evening. All right, let's move on to the next section, which is Budget Committee follow-up items. And I will invite Finance Director Eric Kane to present follow-up items. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the council, budget committee, and members of the community. Thank you all for being here tonight and enjoying yet another Monday with us. So in following up to the May 4th meeting, I want to provide some follow-up and clarify the process and how we got to the proposed budget based on some of the questions and comments I received last week. So back when the city kicked off the budget development process for fiscal year 2027, the budget officer provided guidance to departments to prepare 10% reduction scenarios. And these reduction scenarios were based on what the departments determined is operationally feasible. The budget officer also provided guidance that limited duration positions would not be renewed past their expiring term citywide. After that, the budget officer evaluated the proposed budget and the reduction scenarios to determine which would move forward into the proposed budget. And then I also want to clarify the role of the budget committee and then how it differentiates between operational decision-making, since we are having a lot of conversation around positions. And so department directors have discretion on how they prioritize programming and services within their adopted budgets based on their available resources. So once the budget is adopted, any given department could choose to reallocate resources to a program administratively if they have the resources available without approval from the budget committee. And so in general, as you receive some of our Q&A and responses to the questions that are asked, we do provide broad-based questions, because they are intended to illustrate examples of operational impacts that a department would prioritize under reduced funding levels. And while the committee itself approves the funding levels, those decisions do not prescribe specific operational changes within the department. So I just wanted to clarify that. And again, I just wanted to appreciate all the public comment and the engagement that we have heard throughout this process so far. There is one thing I did want to address as far as what is in the proposed budget for the library. So I think there's been, if you look in the proposed budget book, the library budget is being reduced by $1.95 million, which is approximately 20% from fiscal year 26. However, to clarify, most of that reduction, about 1.53 million of it, or 78%, comes from the lowering of internal service costs, which are not cuts to library staff or materials. And so these are costs that the library pays to support citywide support services like city management, human resources, IT, finance, and facilities. And so I just wanted to clarify that point for everyone that's been interested in reviewing the proposed budget. Sure. So the number was, it's directly on the proposed budget book, 1.53 million, or 78% comes from lowering the internal service costs. And part of that reduction is due to the reductions in central services, which we will talk about during the central services presentation later today, or later tonight. And then lastly, as far as the limited duration positions, so the city does opt to have limited duration positions, which are typically for grant-funded positions. And so these are using one-time funds to fund these positions. And when the funding for those positions run out, it has been typical practice that the positions would discontinue. And that is how that has been introduced into the proposed budget. And then lastly, we have provided a follow-up Q&A responses to the budget materials, or in the materials that were provided to the Budget Committee members. And we are happy to follow up on any of those and continue responding and providing follow-up questions as needed. And that concludes my follow-up.
Thank you, Eric. Any quick questions or comments before we move on? I can see a joint team meeting, so if Budget Committee member, if you join by team, just raise your hand. I should be able to see you. All right, seeing none, let's move on to the next section of the presentation, which is will be from our Community Development Director, Sambo Kirkman. She will present the Community Development Budget. Good evening.
Good evening, Budget Committee members. My name is Sambo Kirkman, the Director of Community Development Department, and with me tonight also on the side is our Business Manager, Corey Robinson. We're here to provide you with insight on the budget for our department and to answer questions you may have, or will be coming up here. Oh, thank you. Okay. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. In the Community Development Department, we are responsible for the planning, designing, and regulating of Tigard's physical and economic growth. While the budget breaks down the department into three categories: community development, economic development, and building, the department naturally divides into 5 divisions with an administrative group that supports the whole department. A brief description of each division in our department are acknowledged on this slide, and the presentation provides descriptions of the program and services within each of these divisions. I note that while redevelopment is part of the department, funding for this division mainly comes from our downtown and Tigard Triangle TIF district funds. This budget will be discussed at next week's budget meeting. Next slide. Citywide work focuses on goals established by the council. For community development, for community development, the programs discussed throughout this presentation reflect a focus on goals 1, 2, and 3: housing opportunities, economic opportunities, and work towards making Tigard a great place to live, work, and play. Next slide. Looking at the numbers, community development's $11.8 million budget, minus the TIF district budget, is a compilation of 4 main funding sources: general fund, building, construction excise tax, and transit lodging taxes. The pie chart shows the breakdown of these funds. With exception to the general fund, all the other funding sources listed have limitations on how they can be spent, which we factored in developing the department's proposed budget. While we briefly discuss these funds and other funding sources, much of tonight's presentation will be focused on the general fund and ways we look to address the deficit gap. This included moving programs where possible to other funding sources, reductions to our material services budget, and the elimination of a vacant position. This reduced our general fund impact from $5.89 million to $5.47 million. Next slide. We'll start with planning. The Planning Division guides development in our community to meet the council goals and the community's visions in the comprehensive plan. This involves both long-range planning that builds the vision and regulations that apply future growth plans through land use permitting. Next slide. The Planning Division work aligns with various adopted policies, including our current council goals and strategies. Council Goal 1 is to create housing opportunities to incentivize the development of housing supply. The division also helps deliver economic opportunity addressed in Goal 2 by looking at ways to grow our local economy. For example, the Tigard Home Project looks to expand limited and appropriate economic activity in residential areas. Next slide. The Planning Division provides a range of services including comprehensive and code amendments, compliance activities, development review, customer service, and code enforcement. In the proposed budget, the department has eliminated one full-time employee that is currently a vacant project planner position. That position, if not eliminated, would have contributed to both the completion of the department's backlog of long-range projects as well as assisting with land use, as we expect to see the number of those complex cases grow with River Terrace at 2.0 and the constant addition of unfunded mandates by the state. We have also significantly reduced our professional services budget, which impacts our ability to do complex data analysis for long-range projects. This means that in the future, these projects will have far less capacity for analysis. The department budget also includes $2.4 million allocated from the Construction Excise Tax Fund. This amount represents the remaining amount of the city's current 5-year contract with Proud Ground for the Permanently Affordable Homeownership Program. The CET funds are restricted by state law to certain affordable housing programs like this one. Next is the Economic Development Division. Local economic vitality has been a concern of the region for many years, and one of the many reasons it is listed as a key council goal. Goal 2 reads, elevated economic opportunities for current and future residents. Next slide. The team took the goal to heart and worked on the development of an economic development strategic plan, a 3-year roadmap to guide the city's work, which was adopted by council in March. The plan centered the city and activities around a unified vision statement, mission statement, strategic pillars, and guiding values. These are identified on the slide. Next slide. Moving forward, the projects and the programs for economic development will focus on 4 strategic pillars: business attraction, support, and growth, partnership and navigation, operation and communication, and developing and placemaking. Next slide. The Economic Development Division currently offers a range of services to businesses such as resource connections, business support, TIF district improvement grants, and career support to residents through training programs like Advanced Tigard. Upcoming work through the Economic Strategic Plan includes a citywide branding and marketing plan to be paid through transit lodging taxes. The remaining transit lodging taxes budget identified in our earlier slide will cover funding to the farmers market and Tigard's Visitor Center. General funds for economic development is separate from other divisions in the Community Development Department. The proposed general fund amount for this division is $990,000, reduced from the adopted $1.19 million in fiscal year 26. This slide outlines the program reductions to address the general fund gap under service level changes. Next slide. Next, the Transportation Division looks towards promoting and creating safe and accessible transportation networks for all users now and into the future that considers the health of our environment, community, and economy. Next slide. Although indirectly aligned with many council goals, the primary council goal alignment is with Strategy 3.2, investing in the safety, connectivity, and adequate maintenance of the transportation network and centering vulnerable users in transportation investments. There are 2 programs in the Transportation Division, Transportation and Safe Routes to School. Next slide. A primary focus of the Transportation Division will be updating the Transportation System Plan, known as the TSP. This is required by the state and is used to create a mechanism to identify and prioritize needed transportation projects in the city. The TSP update is needed also to reassess rates and system charges to fund these projects. The slide also lists other services provided by the Transportation Division. Reductions to the department's materials and services budget has meant looking at inventive ways to address the livability issue associated with transportation. For example, while council has directed staff to pause parking enforcement, the team has looked to providing employee parking relief by developing a program to lease transit parking spaces to be used in an employee parking permit program. You can see from the performance measures in the table on the slide, which includes annual feedback through surveys, on-street parking, and conducting events to support transportation options. Next slide. The second transportation program is Safe Routes to School. The services provided with the Safe Routes to School program are largely driven by the grant that primarily funds the program. These services include regional coordination, bike ped safety education with TTSD schools, activities like walk and roll to school days, engineering solutions, and evaluation of effectiveness of programs through data collection and surveys. 2/3 of the funding of the Safe Routes to School position is expected to come from Metro grants, with about 1/3 to be covered using Transportation Network Company funding instead of the general fund. The performance metrics are largely determined by the grant agreement with Metro and include the items listed on the table. Next slide. Next is the building division. The function of the building division is to protect the Tigard community by enforcing building codes and efficiently reviewing and issuing permits for residential and commercial projects. Next slide. This is done through services such as permit coordination, plan review, inspection, and code compliance. The building division is funded solely through the city's building fund and does not impact the general fund. However, the building team will continue to monitor construction activities to make sure our staffing levels are in sync with the current and expected workloads. Next slide. Okay. While the previous slides covered the work of the Community Development Department, much of the work of the city's work is dependent on the development activity citywide. This next section will briefly discuss the development trends we see. I'll ask City Engineer Joe Wisniewski to join us for this section of the presentation. The outlook for our planning division shows an increased amount of work. After a downturn in land use applications in 2023, we have seen a steady recovery and project that our volume of new applications will recover to 2022 levels within the next fiscal year. Of course, in the context of many economic uncertainties we face at the moment, any number of external factors could upend this projection. There are a number of projects that are pending right now, including the River Terrace 2.0 Community Plan, Downtown Reimagined, Tigard Home, and the Tigard Housing Plan. These projects are currently slated to conclude in the next fiscal year. These projects will likely result in increases in development activity. In terms of our work program looking forward, we are hoping to initiate a fee study and update our planning fees. This is work that several of our peer cities around us have initiated recently. Our fees have not been updated in more than a decade, and we feel that we are due for a closer look to make sure that we are facilitating development while maintaining the fiscal sustainability of the organization. Future projects include full updates to the city's comprehensive plan in 2020. That will be a massive project that will require multiple years and a lot of staff time, as well as consultant costs. At somewhat smaller scale, we are also looking to doing an audit and update to the Tigard Triangle Lien Code, our TSP, and public infrastructure standards. Next slide. This is the building trends. You'll notice we updated this slide to add the number of building inspections performed and updated the project list. Building data identifies a decline in permits submitted and issued and in the number of inspections performed. This shows a downward trend for development activity in the building. However, the upcoming caseload shows a significant number of permits and inspections expected for the upcoming fiscal year. For example, Bull Mountain Apartments, 74 units of affordable housing is currently in plan review. Cedarbrook Assisted Senior Living began construction for their approximately 164 assisted living beds and 32 memory care units. Brookside Memory Care is currently ready to issue with their building permits with 15 units. River Terrace Town Center, which is 10 buildings that ranges from 29 to 35 residential units and some having mixed commercial areas as well. There are currently 10 buildings, 5 have been issued for building permits and are currently under construction, and 5 are projected to be issued in the next several months. So for fiscal year 26, we expect to issue around 4,200 permits with a construction value of approximately $120 million. With River Terrace 2.0 progressing and information requests that we have had for other significant projects, we're expecting a steady construction forecast for the upcoming future. As stated before, due to having a building reserve in the building fund, there's an opportunity to continue tracking development activities and to adjust in future years. Next slide.
Okay, good evening, Chair and members of the Budget Committee. I'm Joe Wisniewski, City Engineer. Also with us tonight is Management Analyst Laura Berry and Business Manager Joe Barrett from Public Works, should we have any questions. Give a little overview of Public Works engineering, and then we'll dive into the trends as well. Within Engineering Division, we have 21 FTE, and our group is split between two primary groups that one delivers the capital improvement plan projects, and then the other half of the group focuses on private development, engineering, permitting, and addressing within the city. So for tonight, we're primarily focused on the private development portion of the engineering division, which is approximately 7 FTE within our group. The key thing to note tonight is you will hear a more robust presentation on engineering and the capital improvement plan at the May 18th meeting. But we wanted to share some time with community development tonight about the development trends. So next slide, please. For engineering, very similar to community development planning in the building division, we have seen a trend downward recently, but now looking at the data, we are starting to see an uptick in permits activity and inspections. Some of it is projects listed on the side here. Director Kirkman covered some of these projects. The one thing we are seeing is we're used to seeing some really large subdivisions come in and they take multiple years to deliver. The size of those projects are smaller right now, but there's still many projects coming in as far as pre-applications, land use review, and moving into what engineering, our permits are called public facility improvements. So the PFI permits are the permits that you see on the screen. The number of inspections compared to the permit applications, they don't correlate one for one because sometimes a smaller application is only going to have 1 or 2 inspections, where one application on a subdivision may cover dozens or more inspections. So don't look at the lines as a 1-to-1 correlation, but there is a nice visual here that we are seeing a upward trend. However, I'm not as optimistic, so we always like to have a plan B on if the work does slow down or private development has an issue. So the next slide, please, will get into how we are planning for the potential for private development to slow down. Right now, we're not feeling it, but this is, just wanted to put it out there in case this happens. We have a way to keep the engineering division busy and revenue covering their work. On the left side is the fiscal year 25 actuals. So you see this percent spent on various activities within engineering. The key thing here, and sorry that the slides are cut off, but I have the numbers in front of me. You'll see the capital improvement side of our office in FY25 was 34%, and private development was 17% of our workload. And then when you look at fiscal year 27, our Plan B option, if we need to find something for our private development staff to work on, is shifting them into the capital improvement side of our budget. And the good thing there is the staff is cross-trained. So if you're doing inspection work on private development, it's similar inspection work or plan review or permitting activity that you would do for a city capital project as you would for a private developer's project. So we're showing that we're making a significant shift of their work to the capital improvement side of our office, with some still staying in private development because there's likely to still be some work with franchise utilities, other public agencies like ODOT, Washington County doing work within the city that they have to get permits from us and require inspections. So there will still always be a need for some portion of private development. But the revenue on the capital improvement portion of our work comes from SDCs, comes from utility rates. It comes from revenue streams that we have healthy funding for right now if the private development does slow down. The other things on this slide, if you wonder what the rest of the pie chart is, it's our administration staff. So myself and our assistant city engineer, our senior admin, and our management analyst are considered administration. And then you see like overhead things like your out of office for staff, and system infrastructure is actually a chargeable task to the capital improvement plan. and that is like when we're working on grant applications or early planning for capital projects that do get charged out to our utilities and various funds. One correction to note, you will see a small wedge on here for Tyler. That was a carryover from fiscal year 25. The Tyler portion of the proposed FY27 work is for different programs that we are implementing right now, but they are not Tyler, and they would be related to our administration and our system infrastructure wedges. So this slide will get updated in the future, but it should not have been called Tyler. It's we're fortunately done with our Tyler portion of work, and that's a label that shouldn't have been carried forward. So with that, I think we can go to go ahead, Sambo.
Okay. So key takeaways from the development trends is that while there is a slowdown in some areas and increases in others, it will be difficult to determine how impactful outside influences will have on our development trend. However, not only does the team look to continuously align their resource needs with projected development activity, we look to find ways to encourage healthy growth in the city. This includes work done through the Economic Strategic Plan and many long-range plans, along with the capital improvement projects that the city engineer will be discussing next week, but also as well as the customer service analysis we are currently participating in to better position the city as development activity increases because of projects like River Terrace 2.0. So with that, that concludes our presentation. We're here to answer any questions you have both about the Community Development Department's program as well as the development trends we've outlined tonight.
Thank you, Sambo and Joe. Committee members, if you have questions, please let me know, or comments. Anybody online, please raise your hand. Aaron, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much for going over that. I did have a question. You said that you were going to have a fee study coming up, and you mentioned that this was the first, I believe you said this is the first time you're going to be having a fee study in about 10 years. Is that standard to wait 10 years to do a fee study? Because I guess I'll just stop there. Is that standard?
It's surely not standard, but again, looking at the backlog of projects and plans that we've had in the past, that has not actually been a priority. So again, with a lot of the work that we hope to do to supplement any declines in development activities, things like the fee study or our customer service analysis are things that we hope to be able to supplement in our workload for this next fiscal year if needed to ensure that we are aligned with what our partner agencies have for things like for studies and process improvements.
My question, again, my follow-up question then is if there was something more regular, like if we were to say every 3 or 4 years, would that make it so that the fees were moving more steadily? One of the things I'm looking at is there going to be a 10-year jump where all of a sudden our fees are much higher, whereas if we had been doing them every 3 or 4 years, our fees would have been going up incrementally, and we would have had more money coming in from fees over that time?
Well, I will say that we do have incremental increases in our fees based on just general cost of living increases. However, part of the fee study will have to assess what the differential in our fees are and to put together a plan that's mindful of what could be supportive from our development community as well. So in order to do this, it requires us to actually do the analysis to determine what the delta is in fees.
And part of that analysis is to compare our current fees and where we'd like our target fees to be with other communities, our surrounding communities. So the concern of having, over significantly higher fees, I think you could relieve that concern by knowing that our fee study will be, comprehensive compared to other cities in our community. So we won't be releasing any exaggerated or inflated fees to planning people, but yeah, it definitely will be in more alignment with what the rest of the community in the greater Portland area would be billed.
Right, and I will say that that's half of my concern. The other half is that we have been, to be honest, undercharging new development and basically leaving potential money on the table to developers, and by not charging fees that are equal to what the other communities are charging. Because if we've been waiting 10 years to update our fees, while other communities have been updating theirs on a more regular basis, and we're now 10 years behind them, our fees are going to be lower than what theirs are. Does that make sense?
We can take those concerns into consideration as we adopt a methodology in figuring out the fees. But at this point in time, in order for us to bring ourselves up to current standards, we are going to have to look at the fees to be able to justify what that looks like and how we can be more mindful of being more sustainable in our funding sources for planning, for actually more, for all.
I guess one comment that I would like to leave on is that potentially maybe having a more regular, more often looking at our fee structure rather than waiting 10 years to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's my hope, is that by having us start the process, similar to how we've identified the key areas, like, I'll bring the economic strategic plan as a fine example, where we've acknowledged that there's a need for certain plans and analysis and studies. And the hope is that as we move forward, we identify those and acknowledge that there needs to be a consistent update to these plans. And so the expectation would be that if we started looking at a fee study, there's an identified, pattern as to when we would start looking at updates in the future as well.
Thank you. Jeff? Jeff, I don't understand what you're saying. Your audio is. No, we cannot hear you, Jeff. It's very scrambled, badly scrambled. Okay.
I'm going to call back. So I'm going to hang up and call back.
Oh, I can hear it now, actually.
Okay, okay, sorry about that. Sorry about the confusion. Sorry that I couldn't.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, please, please call back. I can't hear you again. So we'll wait. We have some time. So, so Joe, you already wrap up your presentation, or you have more?
So this is what I have for tonight, and the rest
Okay.
of the engineering division and the capital improvement plan will be on the 18th next week.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure. That's why I thought you combined your presentation. So, Jeff? All right. So Jeff, we're going to come back to you after the next presentation. So please be patient. I will call up on you. So I will invite, at this time, we'll invite our information technology presentation. Oh, okay. I can't hear you, Jeff. Okay, so we do, now all of a sudden we have 4 more questions. Okay, great. So Councilor Robin, please go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe a suggestion for Jeff is if he could type his question in the chat.
All right.
But I just wanted to kind of sum it up or say that you guys run a very tight ship. You do a lot of excellent work across many, many areas within the city, just shown by how many times you come up and talk to us in meetings on various things. The general fund budget so a lot of your budget is not paid for by the general fund. It's paid for by other projects, and I think that's important to note. Your budget request is $5.47 million, and that's also including cutting 1 FTE. So it's another department who's cutting an FTE because we have a shortfall across the city. I just kind of wanted to, you talked super fast, so I kind of wanted to make sure we said that, lots of departments are having different cuts. And also just a compliment, I was at the farmer's market yesterday, and somebody who doesn't live in Tigard but was doing development work in Tigard and said at every step of the way with community development, he had a very successful and very positive experience. So even though we have a tight budget and you guys are covering a lot of different things, it's great work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council President Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to both of you and Joe for the presentation. So my question is quick, Sambo. So I'm going back to the performance measures, and one of the references is to make 65% progress on a transportation system. And so my question is, so is that a standard goal? How is 65% determined? Is that under because we're short on FTE? I'm just curious about the number and what that means.
Our goal was to establish certain metrics so we can come back to. And so we established 65. I'll be pretty transparent to say next year's conversation would include being able to provide a true metrics to that and being able to acknowledge how far we are. But there wasn't any industry standards to that. It was just a matter of trying to find what seemed reasonable with the number of actual FTEs we have within the transportation section.
Okay, I appreciate and look forward to the discussion on the measurements. Thank you.
All right, Jeff, would you like to try it again?
I'll try one more time. I can off maybe.
We don't understand you. Sorry, it's all scrambled for some reason. Sorry, I didn't get that. But oh, okay, all right. Bill.
Thank you for your presentation. I had just a quick question on the economic development side. Do you keep or record any metrics on essentially on your pipeline? Number of businesses that are, say, recruited in, number of businesses that you're discussing opportunities with, and then potentially closure. How many of those businesses actually come and set up shop in Tigard?
I will have to check to confirm if we have, I don't believe we have all those metrics, but we do probably have some available to identify businesses we've spoken to. Part of the strategic plan was to identify what resources we have, including our partners, enabled to be able to kind of clarify that kind of connection. How are we connecting with these businesses? Is it just the city itself, or our partners such as the Chamber and TDA able to do that as well? So that's part of the conversations as we develop the economic strategic plan, is to ensure that we're creating those metrics and the abilities to track that better than we currently have.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. You had mentioned the funding of SRTS, which is within the transportation program, partly by the transportation network companies, otherwise known as TNCs. Yeah. And that is administered by the City of Portland. I know in the past they've been delayed in getting us that funding. Is that still the case, is my first question. Then I have two follow-up. We have experienced delays to it. Our grant manager has been helpful in creating a system to better invoice the funds there. I will say that there's available funds within the TNC to cover the Safe Routes to School coordinator position based on the minimal expenditures we've had to the fund since it was developed. Great, thank you. And perhaps a question for the next meeting as a follow-up is, in the past, what have the TNC dollars been used for? And so are we taking anything away from another program that we'd be putting towards this?
I can actually answer that right now. Okay. We've used, I think, a portion of it for the Power to the Pedal program, and that is the only program that's had it. So this is not taken away from any. In fact, what our hope is to be able to utilize those funds to offset what would originally been from the general fund itself.
Sambo, can I make a quick, sorry?
Oh yeah, Tiffany.
This is Tiffany Gerke, transportation, the principal transportation planner. I just want to make one little correction. We've used that those funds as a match for the grant that covered the EGO project.
That was the other thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany, for that clarification.
But, yeah, no problem. But otherwise, we have not spent any of those dollars, and we're getting about $25,000 to $30,000 per quarter. So that's what we've accrued so far, and we continue to see that.
Thank you, Tiffany. Councilor Schlack?
Thank you. Going back to the planning section, you mentioned that the reduction of the vacant FTE would sort of impact or delay deliverables related to long-term projects. And you mentioned unfunded mandates. So I'm just keeping in mind River Terrace 2.0 coming up and a lot of the state requirements to have applications turn around within a certain period of time. I was hoping if you could elaborate a little bit more on sort of that tension that exists.
Well, the unfortunate part about unfunded mandates is we still have to comply with it. So it gets absorbed into our workload. I guess Assistant Director Warren can also answer it, and correct me if I'm wrong. But most of what that means is basically flexibility in our FTEs within the planning division. Those that may be working on long-range planning, if there were to be an abundance of turnaround caseloads, that would factor into the abilities to complete certain long-range planning projects. We do prioritize plans such as River Terrace 2.0 and our Tigard Home project, but if we got to a point where there was a snowball effect with current planning, we would have to reassess what our workload looks like for the division to accommodate the mandates. Because again, a key element of our planning division is meeting regulatory requirements, if we like them or not.
Yeah, no, I'd add that those regulatory requirements, Skylar Warren, Assistant Director of Community Development, those regulatory requirements are themselves displacing other long-range projects. So when we pivot our focus to those mandates, it delays long-standing projects that have been kind of on our slate. Things like our sensitive lands chapter update, our sign code update, all those kind of things. So those are the kind of projects that would get further pushed back with the loss of the FTE. We will still get to them, just it will take us longer.
Mr. Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor. In the past, it was my understanding with River Terrace 1.0 to alleviate some of that FTE reduction or shortfall or just not enough staff, that the developers actually had loaned out an individual who could help out to further fast track some of that housing. Was that the case, and is that something we could investigate for River Terrace 2.0?
If that happened, that was before my time in 2017. So that plan was adopted in 2014, and we would have been processing applications starting that next year. So it would have been in that 2-year period. We can look into that. I'm not aware of that, though.
Yeah, and our department is looking at innovative ways to be able to address the issue of resource limitations. Probably one that Assistant Director Warren and I would want to evaluate further, because again, one of the key mandates of our department is to be the regulatory body for the city with regards to that. So as you start talking about bringing in others to do that type of work, there is a concern, I think, of making sure their focus and charge is city-related and not necessarily based on what the private development wants. But again, I think those are things that we can evaluate once we get to that point.
Thank you. And that's a good reminder that every time we talk to our state legislature, we have to remind them that all those regulations equal to unfunded mandate for the city, right? We have to spend our own money to comply. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your presentation. Any other comments or question? Jeff, you want to try again, or you want to type your comments?
Yeah. I'm trying from my phone.
Oh, yes, we can hear you now. Yay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
God. Hey, thank you. Thank you all for your patience and a wonderful presentation so far. The first question I had related to an expenditure, the $2.4 million for the Affordable Housing Fund. I wanted to make sure I understood that. That's part of an existing contract, I understand?
Is that? Yes. So,
I guess my question for that is, are we tied, are we committed to follow through on that contract legally? Is that a requirement?
So the $2.4 million is an amount that's remaining in a 5-year contract we have with a local nonprofit that provides down payment assistance and permanently preserves affordable homeownership units in the city.
Well, I understand that, and I'm sorry, I can't read your, I guess my question more is when I look for that particular expenditure in the budget, I don't see a line item totaling $2.4 million. And so I'm wondering where that shows up.
So the reason for that is that comes from a completely different fund than the general fund. It's what's called the Construction Excise Tax Fund. So the Construction Excise Tax was a tax on development that was adopted by the council in 2019. It's enabled under state law. We're one of many jurisdictions that has this tax. And under state law, that money must be used for affordable housing development and incentives. And so the city currently is allocating those monies toward that affordable homeownership program. I will note that that fund, looking forward into the future, it will be a critical source of funding to implement some of the goals around housing in the River Terrace 2.0 area. So we both wouldn't propose cutting the affordable homeownership program, but certainly in the future, we may look to pivot that fund toward development incentives in the River Terrace 2.0 area.
I'd like to ask just a couple of questions. I don't want to go too far and border into policy, but just so I understand, the execution of that fund is effectively a transfer of assets from the city of Tigard to a nonprofit in an effort to keep houses at an affordable level. Is that kind of how I understand it in general terms?
Well, it's yes, in a very general sense. So the way that assistance program works is that the city is providing through the nonprofit down payment assistance to a home buyer who is at or below the 80% area median income level. So that's workforce housing, that's the workforce demographic. In exchange for the city's investment, the organization, the nonprofit, which is called the Community Land Trust, they permanently preserve that housing unit as affordable. So when it is resold, it is sold to another buyer who qualifies at 80% or below of the area median income. So as opposed to regulated affordable housing, which uses federal incentives, that kind of thing, which is really only under an affordability contract for about 30 years. For this one-time investment, the city gets a permanent affordable homeownership unit. So there's some nuance to that. Yes, it is transferring to the nonprofit, but really the benefit is accruing to the working household and to all of the subsequent buyers of that unit.
And if I look at like the expectation, that's we hope to get a couple of houses a year out of an anticipated growth in Tigard of 500 houses a year, I guess, give or take. Is that about right?
So right now the contract aims for 3 to 5 units per year. That has one of the reasons that we have more money left in the contract is that actually other agencies have started to step in as well, including Washington County and the state of Oregon. And so our dollars are going further. And so it is very likely that, we will have some of those funds perhaps left at the end of the contract. The other thing that's affecting this is just the general real estate market right now, and it's made it very difficult for buyers at that 80% AMI level, even when provided with subsidy, to both find units and find units that are affordable based on their income. So, as goes the housing market, so goes this program. It is definitely an opportunity-based thing. So if we were to see a dramatic reduction in number of units that were coming in at that price point, such as with River Terrace 2.0, or if we saw a dramatic decrease in interest rates, we would expect to see a lot of uptake on that program in the next year.
Okay, and I guess to my first question on the program, are we legally required to finish that contract?
So that's probably a question for our contracting folks. I mean, certainly, we would not recommend pivoting away from a program like that midstream. There are buyers right now out shopping with those subsidy dollars. We know that there are at least 2 families right now who are shopping, and so to pivot away from that would leave those families who are looking to locate in Tigard in a pretty bad position.
Skylar, can I follow up with?
I can understand that, and I'm just wondering, if I look 30, 60 years hence as a city, I don't know if it matters whether a nonprofit owns the land actively or whether it's through a lease agreement with the city myself.
Well, I would
don't see
follow.
why the city couldn't own that land.
I would follow up that, again, the CET funds are restricted to certain types of uses itself. And we are following through with what I believe the council's goals were in providing affordable housing, and established the funds, the $2.4 million, as funds that should be moved towards affordable housing. And for us to not move forward with it would mean the funds would be set aside for other affordable housing projects. It is not funds that the committee could delegate to other types of services. So keeping that in mind, that is why.
I understand. I think the rest is probably suitable more for discussion later. I think it'll take up too much time.
Sure.
Now, I guess I had another question on the planning slide where you had the River Terrace, all the long-term planning stuff. And if you could put that back up, because I think there was a question about it earlier when I was having some voice problems. And I wanted to understand, just as an example, the River Terrace 2.0 planning, we received like a $700,000 grant to support that. And I'm wondering, at least I think I recall that, I'm wondering if you could put into context how that Metro grant compared with the total cost to date of planning that subdivision.
So we received $700,000 from Metro. We also received an additional $100,000 from Metro later. We received somewhere around $150,000 from the state of Oregon for the housing plan component and the development code component of the work. We received $116,000 from the federal government for the climate and energy efficiency planning component of it. So of that what was originally a $1.4 million project, I believe, just over $1 million was covered by grants. So we will expend every single one of those grant dollars by the end of the project, and we have seen a couple of additional cost needs on the project. They've been accommodated within our budget in the last fiscal year. So we don't right now anticipate that there would be any additional overruns in the next fiscal year. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I mean, it does in general. I guess what I was trying to get at was a relative budgeting on your planning, how much was externally supported versus how much was supported by general fund revenue, and maybe you know, River Terrace 2.0 is one bucket, Downtown Reimagined. It'd be nice to see these planning projects in the scope of how much it's going to cost us as the community to move these things forward. And then I think that's important for people to understand.
This might be something we should probably follow up with as a side note, so.
Yeah, maybe it's a question to follow up later.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
I think that was it.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. We are reaching the time limit for this two sections, so if you have any questions, please do follow up with Eric, and he will direct your question to the right person for answering. All right, so let's move on to next section, which is information technology presentation of budget, and we'll invite our IT director, Carrie Anderson, to present the budget. Good evening.
All right, I know you guys are all waiting for this information. All right, thank you, Council and Budget Committee, for having us tonight. I'm Carrie Anderson, IT Director for the City of Tigard. Next to me is one of my IT managers, Ben Kearns. He's here for moral support, in case my brain decides not to work. So before I get started, I just wanted to note that all the photos in this presentation are of Tigard IT team members and our equipment here in Tigard. We had a little bit of fun with our design and communications team, so, but most importantly, it highlights the team that often works behind the scenes to support our staff and our community. Next slide. So our mission is outlined on the slide, but the straightforward version really is we aim to deliver quality service, improve efficiency through technology, and remain fiscally responsible. Last year, we reorganized IT into divisions. Previously, without that structure, it was difficult to clearly understand where resources were being allocated. This change has allowed us to better categorize, manage, and communicate our services. As shown here, our divisions are infrastructure and cybersecurity, enterprise application administration, and GIS. Next slide. So last week, you heard about the library's technology program. The technology that supports that program is fully managed and supported by Tigard IT. It's also important to highlight that the library represents the city's most public-facing technology environment, including computers, Wi-Fi, copiers, printers, and AV systems, serving both staff and community on a daily basis. Next slide. Last week, we also heard from Chief McDonald about the police department's strong support for and adoption of technology. Today, most of PD's infrastructure, both in the office and in the field, is supported by our IT department. What's been especially impactful is PD's willingness to partner closely with IT. That collaboration has led to unexpected wins, including moving alarm permits into Tyler's EPL system, with additional processes and to follow. These are true win-win opportunities, improving efficiency for staff, enhancing service for our community, and creating cost savings for the city. Next slide. Okay, so before I move into fiscal year 27, it's important to provide historical context. When I stepped into this role 2 years ago, there was a significant amount of work to complete and reorganize. We needed to finish the Tyler implementation, modernize and secure our network infrastructure, and take a comprehensive look at the IT budget. While the team focused on technical improvements, I led a deep dive into the IT budget. A key priority throughout this work has been ensuring transparency, accountability, and long-term sustainability in how we manage our technology investments. In fiscal year 25, much of our focus was on contracts and the IT ISF, or the IT Internal Service Fund. We identified all contracts and services managed by IT, reviewed each for future alignment, and eliminated redundant or unnecessary applications. We also centralized several major cost areas. the first being Tyler Technology. We established clear oversight and reduced reliance on consultants by building internal expertise within our enterprise application and ERP service delivery teams. In tandem, I worked with finance and IT, my IT department, to consolidate copiers and printers. We went from 5 vendors, contracts, and various machines to a single leasing and servicing agreement, which reduced our costs by approximately $30,000 a year. And then there's the landlines. We consolidated all the billing and mapped out the phones and extensions. This work was a necessary step in transparency to help us prepare for the move to Microsoft Teams phone environment. The move to Teams phones is currently underway and expected to save approximately $70,000 annually. While these consolidation efforts reduce costs citywide, they also centralize the expenses within the IT budget, resulting in an overall increase to IT of approximately $620,000 a year. For today's budget conversation, this means IT now has full oversight, which improves transparency and governance. Departments that previously carried these costs will directly now see them reflected in IT's indirect charges, along with corresponding reductions in other budget line items. Additionally, the IT ISF was mentioned in previous budget cycle, but as a reminder, the work completed reduced annual indirect costs for this fund from approximately $1 million a year to $300,000 a year. Next slide. Moving into fiscal year 26, we continued our network modernization efforts, including transitioning from a legacy virtual desktop environment to modern Microsoft Cloud services. This shift has improved our security posture through built-in Microsoft security and compliance tools, reduced maintenance, reduced existing licensing through proper management, and reduced support costs, creating a savings of approximately $350,000 per year. We are also continuing to realize additional savings through the ongoing transition to the Teams phones and elimination of redundant and underutilized software licenses. Moving on, we have or will have achieved several citywide general fund reductions. These include, by the end of fiscal year 27, police portion of general fund will be reduced by $47,000 by eliminating 3 redundant applications due to the network upgrades. Additionally, our improved cybersecurity controls have allowed for our cybersecurity insurance coverage to increase from $1 million to $2 million, reduce the deductible by half while maintaining a similar premium. And last but not least, the final phase of Tyler enterprising permit and licensing has eliminated approximately $300,000 in overlapping charges of redundant and legacy applications. Next slide. Okay, so that history brings us to fiscal year 27 and our proposed budget. The total proposed budget for IT is $4.5 million and reflects continued efforts to align resources thoughtfully while maintaining core operational services. This proposed budget includes a reduction of 2 FTE, as well as 41% reduction in our materials and services budget. We have also implemented reductions of over 10% across all of our divisions for travel and training. Before we jump into questions, let me quickly review the work of our IT programs. Next slide. Should have brought some water. Okay, cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is working well. You probably won't notice it, and that's the goal. Everything behind the scenes, we're constantly monitoring, identifying risk, and putting safeguards in place to protect the city's data and operations. Next slide. If cybersecurity is about protection, the networks and help desk are all about keeping everything running, from the network and data center to end user devices and support. This team makes sure staff can do their jobs without interruption 24/7, whether that's in the office, in the field, or during a budget meeting like this one. Thank you, Jason, in the back room. Next slide. Okay, if the network keeps running, then the enterprise application ERP service delivery, Ben's team, ensures that the business of the city actually works through technology. This is where technology meets operations, managing systems like Tyler that power everything from permitting and licensing to financials, ensuring processes are efficient, data is accurate, and services are delivered smoothly to both staff and community. Next slide. GIS is where data meets location. If you ever used a map to understand what's happening in the city, you've seen our GIS team in action. This team turns complex information into maps, tools, and insights that support decision-making from infrastructure and planning to emergency response and public information. Next slide. All right, as we look ahead, our focus remains on continuous improvement, grounded in strong financial stewardship, thoughtful organization of systems and workflows, and a continued commitment to customer service. We are prioritizing investments that make the most of our tools that we currently have, while also ensuring staff are supported through training and adoption so technology can be used to its full potential. At the end of the day, our goal is simple: to deliver reliable, secure, and efficient technology services that support the city of Tigard and provide the community the value they deserve. Thanks for allowing me to share, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Carrie. Questions, comments? Councilperson Wolf.
Thank you, Carrie. That was wonderful, and just really appreciate the amazing work that your team department is doing to really shed costs for the city. So thank you. So just as a follow-up on the 2 FTE, clearly you've generated a tremendous amount of efficiencies, but what is the impact to your department by putting forward those 2 FTE that would be reduced?
Yeah, so one of the positions is a IT project manager / business systems analyst. I think we're fine with that. That's not much of an impact. I think that was here for Tyler. The other position is an administrative assistant. That one is going to be very impactful to us. We purchase a lot of things. Our administrative assistant handles a lot of those invoices, the purchasing, the purchase orders. So there's a lot of AP work kind of involved in that work for the admin. So that will be a bit of a pain.
Yusuf.
Thank you, Director. My question is just around Tyler Technologies. I've seen them through a few of these budget presentations now, and I'm just curious if you could explain if those are all kind of work under one thing, or if it's kind of like partitioned off into different departments that are doing this, if you know, or if it's kind of like more centralized and all the different departments have access to it. I guess I'm just trying to understand, is it mainly just one vehicle through Tyler, or is this something that we're paying through multiple different departments?
Absolutely. So Tyler Technologies is the name of the company. It's an enterprise resource tool, right? So there's modules underneath that company. So we reference it as Tyler here, but it's basically a module for every department that it's supporting. So there's a module for finance, a module for permitting, and if we were to do PD, it would be that. And so those all communicate behind the scenes, and Ben's team has some administrators who pull data from different modules and create reports. So they are connected by their own system, and then they're connected by Ben's team behind the scene as well.
That makes sense. And then I guess what I'm asking about is, does each department have to pay separately for that?
So that is shared out by the indirect service, the indirect cost. So they were centralized into our department, and then they're redistributed out to each department based on who's using what module and at what percentage.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yes, thank you, Director. Quick follow-up from Councilor Wolf's question. Are those 2 positions, are those open positions currently or filled positions?
One is open and one is filled.
Okay, thank you. Second thing is around cybersecurity. So I don't know if this is a trend with cities, but I know over the last, say, decade or so, it's become very popular to hold hostage computer systems and demand ransoms. Does in our cybersecurity platform, whatever we have, do we have insurance against those kinds of incidents? You know, that if we were held hostage, pay us $1 million and whatever, that we would have some sort of backup to assist the city in paying that.
To pay the ransom, is that what you're asking? Yes. Okay. Yeah, so there's a line item there that talks about cybersecurity insurance, and that's exactly what that insurance is for.
My final thing is, although I don't really consider this an IT thing, I'm wondering if there's some initiative going on within the city that IT is involved with, is around AI. Different, whatever LLM package you want to pick. Is there a center of excellence being set up to, test those capabilities and see how they might be able to help across the city in terms of supporting some of these personnel reductions and how that might make people more effective and efficient?
Yeah, I would say that that's on the horizon. We haven't ventured down that path because we needed to stabilize the department and the work that we were doing and the security around what we were doing before we could venture into AI. We do have a couple of pilots currently with Copilot and ChatGPT for a small select group of individuals who are using that tool to kind of do their daily work and kind of do some assessments, but it's pretty informal. I'd say most of my department is using that tool right now. And so it's on our to-do list, but we haven't quite got there yet.
Thank you.
Councilor Shaw?
Thank you so much, and I'm really pleased to hear about all the efficiencies and the reductions. You had also mentioned in the materials that there was a 41% reduction to the materials services budget and the 57% reduction in FY 2025. What is that, and is that affecting other departments as well?
So no, it's not affecting other departments. So it's a lot of things, but the majority of it, I would say, is coming from the infrastructure side, which is the redesign of the network. And so we have an amazing manager, Robert, who has came in, created the vision, decided, hey, we need to do this, let's do it. And so over 2 years, we've been executing that vision. And as he rolls out each kind of phase of that process, we're able to cut back on other applications that we don't need.
Any other comments or question? I don't see any online, so thank you again, Carrie, and your team for your efficiency and the presentation. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I made it.
Yeah, half the time. All right, so let's move on to the next section of the discussion, which is Central Services Department's presentation of budget. And we have our Finance Director, Eric Kane, again, and assistants to the City Manager, Nicole Hendricks, to present.
All right. Thank you, Chair and members of the Budget Committee. So if we go to the next slide, I'll provide an overview of the central services. So I alluded to what central services are earlier in our conversation today, and then you just heard from the IT department, which is a large portion of our central services portfolio. But I wanted to highlight some of the different services specifically that are covered under central services. At a high level, central services are really the behind-the-scene work, and that happens to support all of the community-facing departments. For every community service that we offer at the city, there are many other hands behind the scenes that are making sure that happens smoothly. So overall, you can see the list of the divisions and departments that are represented within central services. And then when you look at the budget book itself, the central service departments are in its own fund. And those funds are recovered through cost allocations through all of the various departments that they support. In total, the Central Services Department budget is Central Service Fund budget is $16.3 million. And from fiscal year 26, the reduction is $1.6 million, or about 9%. And you'll see shortly where many of the reductions are concentrated within the Central Service departments. And then a last thing to note that we'll just touch on shortly is the cost allocation plan study. So as some of the Budget Committee members or council members might recall, we had started a indirect cost allocation plan update in a prior 2 fiscal years ago. So that study has been completed, and as a result, there has been a change in the allocation. So that is why you have noticed some of the changes in some of the various departments in the proposed budget. Next slide, please. So I want to clarify where some of the reductions are, and just to kind of look citywide, those that are impacting the general fund. So this is a visualization of where the changes are from the prior fiscal year. So this is without indirect costs. These are just your direct costs and where those changes are. And so if you look at the comparison, you'll see on the right-hand half of that chart, those are all of the central service divisions and departments that are taking reductions in this proposed fiscal year. And then if you go to the next slide, this is basically the same information just as a percentage. The only reason why this is different from the other slide is because as a percentage, the police budget as a percentage is fairly flat, 4%, because the only change year over year for the police budget is really focused on things like cost of living adjustments, required contractual escalators. And the same also follows for Parks and Recreation. But as a percentage, you do see that there are some impactful reductions across the board with central services. And then you heard earlier from Director Kirkman, the reductions in their department as well. Next slide, please. So I want to do a quick recap on what a cost allocation plan is, because I've been saying that quite a bit tonight. So a cost allocation plan is essentially all the work that's happening behind the scenes. How do we pay for those services equitably across the city? The equitable piece is an important factor because a portion of the cost to pay for these services come from the general fund, the enterprise funds, as well as certain special revenue funds. And so there has to be some sort of factor to make sure that these are defensible and justifiable when we're talking about setting, for example, like setting rates, when we're setting an equal share to reflect what the exchange is for who's benefiting from those services. And so a cost allocation plan includes the biggest component of it is the central service department itself, which we just covered. So that is a pool of funds or a pool of expenditures. As I highlighted before, that's that $16 million. And then you have your receiving departments. And so these are your departments that are benefiting from those services. And so that's like your library, police, parks and recreation departments that use those services. And then you have your direct costs, which are what the staffing and materials and services that those receiving departments expend. And then lastly, the indirect cost is their proportionate share of paying for central services. So next slide, please. And so when you look at all of those different buckets and costs for central services, on the left-hand side, those are that's a list of all the central service costs. Those are allocated based on, again, a defensible statistic. So on the right-hand side, you can see all the different factors that were used to allocate those costs. So a real, maybe simplistic calculation would be like square footage. So we calculate or allocate costs for like how we maintain the cost to maintain our facilities based on the size of square footage of all of our facilities in the entirety of the city campus. For HR, the number of recruiting, job postings. And so that's just an example of how those costs get allocated. And so there is some sort of defensible metric to make sure that those costs are being allocated equitably. Next slide, please. All right, so that covers central service costs. Now we'll kind of shift gears and go directly into some of the department budgets. And so for finance and court, you can see the breakout between the different cost centers for finance and court. Overall, the proposed budget for the fiscal year 27 budget is $6.4 million. Overall, we're expecting a relatively flat budget from the prior year. One thing to note is that some of the constraints within the finance and court budget is a significant portion of our materials and services are tied directly to fixed costs, which include things like credit card fees, our banking fees, mailing costs for our bills, and audit fees. There's really not a lot of discretionary costs included in our budget. And so we continue to find ways to be innovative to save on costs, such as we've been in discussion about starting an e-bill campaign to get customers to switch over to electronic billing. But again, those are kind of costs that are outside of our control. Next slide, please. So going into a little bit more detail with finance and court. Our division is separated into these 5 areas. And so the first one, the administration, that's providing budgeting and financial planning, debt and investment management, and also system and development charge administration. Your financial operations team, that's your general primary accounting functions, such as financial reporting, accounts payable and receivable, and payroll. Contracts and purchasing is responsible for ensuring we are following state procurement laws and executing contracts with vendors, as well as providing central administration and oversight over grants citywide. Utility billing, another area within finance, is responsible for billing over 21,000 utility accounts for residential, commercial, irrigation customers, and fire hydrants for the Tigard water service area. So this includes part of unincorporated Washington County, as well as King City and the city of Durham. And then lastly, the municipal court reports up through finance. However, they are not a central service department, so I want to highlight that separately. Rather, they are wholly funded by the general fund, but they do report up through finance. So none of their costs get allocated to any of the departments. Next slide, please. And I will be speaking on behalf for HR, but we do have our HR team here present. Just at a high level, the HR budget saw a reduction from the fiscal year 26 budget for about 8%. The reduction is primarily due to realized savings through increased or a reduction in our insurance premiums. One of the conscious efforts that we made from a cost-cutting strategy is to do an actuarial analysis of our property and casualty insurance to determine whether or not increasing the deductible would provide savings. And through the actuarial analysis, it was determined that there would be some substantial savings that we would realize. So we're now seeing the impacts of those savings in this upcoming budget. However, you can see that materials and services is actually a very significant portion of their budget, and that is because the cost of insurance is all centered or pooled within the HR and risk budget, which is a significant cost, as you would imagine. And so these are, again, there's not a lot of discretion on some of these costs, as they represent property and casualty and cybersecurity insurance, and as well as legal costs. With that, I will turn it over to Assistant to the City Manager, Nicole Hendricks, to go over city.
Great. Good evening, Budget Committee members. Good to see you all. So as Finance Director King mentioned, I'll go ahead and present the proposed budget for city management. So our team is responsible for day-to-day management and operations of city departments, which entails a wide variety of internal and external facing services. For this presentation, this includes the City Manager's Office, strategic initiatives, design and communications, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and community events. So in terms of the program areas, this includes our city administration. So this is for things such as coordinating the implementation of our city council goals, government affairs and policy, volunteer and outreach. So that includes our citywide volunteer program and boards and committee support. Houselessness, which is primarily funded through an IGA with Washington County, climate, citywide communications, digital engagement, graphic design, postage and mail, and special events. Next slide, please. So the total proposed budget for all of these divisions is around $2.2 million. Our proposed reductions for this fiscal year include 3 personnel. So these positions are vacant and include the Assistant City Manager, which is one of 2 Assistant City Managers, Strategic Initiatives Program Manager, and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Belonging Manager. We also made some significant reductions in our materials and service costs. So this includes things like professional and contractual services, travel and training costs for staff, and then advertising and publicity costs as well. So comparing from last fiscal year, our proposed budget shows a 22% reduction in personnel, which is from the vacant positions I mentioned above. We are also seeing a proposed reduction in materials and services by over half, which is at 54%. And we did see an increase in interdepartmental services. However, even with those increases, our total reduction is still around 23% from the prior fiscal year. I wanted to also speak to two areas that have received some public comment. The first being that we are proposing to not fund 4 of our special events for the 2027 calendar year. All 4 events have been introduced over the last 5 years, so they're newer and they have grown significantly each year, particularly in staffing and contractual costs, given the planning and logistics it takes to create and put on these events. This includes things like police overtime, public works overtime, city management staff time. All these events happen on weekends and holidays, as well as an events consultant to help with the logistics. We did complete a cost analysis back in the fall and had a council meeting discussion to adjust for this calendar year for events, particularly with trying to pursue more sponsorships and to help offset some of those costs. However, that's not a sustainable long-term approach to these, and so ultimately these events are something we'd like to see community partners continue on. So we are starting to have some conversations with some partners to see how these events could continue in future years, just not organized by the city. The second is the Backyard Habitat Program. We did make the operational decision based on the impact reports we've received from that organization who runs the program, compared it to the cost of the program, and recognized the ecological benefits of the program and want to continue to promote and communicate to homeowners the importance of creating healthy and healthy habitats for their yards, but it would be at their own expense rather than funded through the city. Next slide, please. So for the city recorders and city attorney, there is a combined total proposed budget of $962,000. As you can see from the chart, the costs are primarily made up of personnel services, and the proposed budget reflects a 4% increase due to staffing costs. And given the limited areas to reduce, there are no other significant changes proposed. The team did make some reductions to their travel training costs to help reduce the budget. And lastly, we have our mayor and council budget, and that proposed budget is $461,000 with reductions in 1 FTE, which is a mayor and council position, assistant position that is currently vacant. And then in materials and services, so for professional contractual services, travel and training for each counselor, and special department expenses. So those are things like reducing the cost of our State of Our City event and things like that. Compared to fiscal year 26, the proposed shows a 27% decrease in personnel, 14% decrease in materials and services. And while, again, interdepartmental services increased, overall there was a 10% decrease to the mayor and council budget. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Mayor, for Budget Committee questions and discussion.
Thank you, Nicole and Eric, for your presentation. Any questions or comments? Councilperson Wolf.
Nicole, thank you for that. And I'd like, just for the public discussion and record, the proposed reduction of special events, would you share specifically what those are at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So that would include the Pride Celebration and Festival, Juneteenth celebration, 4th of July, and LT Gray Fest that happens in the fall.
And then my second follow-up question on the Backyard Habitat, is there like a dollar, and I apologize, I was thinking through a variety of things if you said that, the financial impact of that program?
So we pay $25,000 annually for the program.
Perfect, thank you. No further questions, thank you.
Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, Council President Wolf asked my second question, but related to the first question of the events. Wasn't Pride an event that actually TTSD had, but then transferred to the city because they had a limited funding? And so they asked if we could sponsor it. Am I remembering that correctly or not?
Wasn't involved in the initial conversations, but I do know from the start, I think it was a joint effort. So it was a conversation between the school district and the city, and we continue to partner with them on the events, but I'm not sure how it originated exactly.
If I could maybe comment on that. In the earlier days of the event, TTSD provides some financial contribution, whereas now they do not due to their own budget constraints. And I think I know you didn't ask about other events, but some of the other events also have started off as community-led events that the city has taken on due to the partners not wanting to continue the event anymore.
Ethan?
Thank you. I'm wondering if we could go back to the first of the two light blue bar charts a few slides back. And my question is specifically about the library, just to see if I'm understanding this correctly. So is it accurate to say that of the library's $1.95 million proposed cut, about 426,000 of that, or roughly a quarter of it, is to be offset by savings from this amount of reduced central services charges?
Sorry, I apologize. I might ask you to frame that a different way because I don't quite understand the question.
Yeah, sure. So do these negative numbers here, like the negative 426,000 for the library, does that indicate savings, so to speak, for the library? Because these are cuts to the central services budget that the library would have otherwise been paying?
No, so this is actually just for clarification where I'm pulling these numbers. So that $426,000 is, and also for any of the changes that you see here, those are reductions in direct costs for these departments. So that is like their personnel costs and materials and services cost reductions. So it's essentially their total budget less the interdepartmental services and the change year over year.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question about the strategic initiatives, the 1,800. And I'm seeing, there's a proposed reduction of 1 headcount in that area. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little to how that ties into Tigard's emergency preparedness planning that is tied into the acquisition of the Public Works building if the bond passes. Because it would seem like that's where this strategy would fall under, if I read it correctly. Like the emergency preparedness part of it.
So we do have a separate EOC program that is embedded within the Public Works Department. And so that would not fall under the Strategic Initiatives Program Manager.
Okay, so this doesn't, the reduction here doesn't have any projected negative impact on the future disaster preparedness work that's got to happen. Is that how I understand it?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Robbins? Oh, Councilor Shack first. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, one clarification going back to the first of those two blue column charts. The footnote police changes netted against new revenue they're expected to generate through partnerships. Just to refresh my memory, is that referring to the Washington County DA and TTSD IGA partnerships that were mentioned last week?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Robbins.
Okay, that didn't give me a lot of time. I guess this is just an overall comment that this is a tough budget year for all of the departments. Some of the cuts seem more dramatic than others, but I think after sitting through presentations from all of the departments and going through and adding up the FTE cuts, many departments are having multiple positions cut. And it's kind of hard to remember that when you're looking at all the slides. And so I made a chart at the end, and it looks like total, the city is cutting 13.4 FTE total, which is a lot over that's like 5%, isn't it? If we have 300 and something, maybe more like 4%. I did appreciate what you said at the beginning, kind of putting into perspective the library cuts, that a lot of it was through efficiencies found with the WCCLS. That doesn't mean that the cuts that are happening aren't going to be any less painful, but it does feel like it's a little more fair, considering like city management is cutting multiple positions, central services is cutting, I guess I kind of added them together, central services and city management is cutting 3 positions. I would love to be able to kind of have a chart so that the public can see, like listing, I kind of drew one up of all of these departments with the budgets and the budget changes, and what part of that reduction is through efficiencies versus actual cuts, so that we can see, is this fair or not? We had a comment saying that the city is already safe enough, so we can cut some police, and I would assert that the city is so safe because of the hardworking, really efficient police officers we have. Our city is growing and staff hasn't increased for the police. And police is also cutting 1 position that's just not going to be filled. So while this is a difficult budget for everybody, after seeing all of these, I feel better seeing that everyone is taking a cut, and it's not solely on the library. And that doesn't mean that the tremendous cut that they're having isn't important and isn't going to be painful, but we are losing FTEs in multiple other departments too.
Thank you, and I would like to thank my fellow councilors for our hard work in making a significant cut to our city council budget as well. So we get rid of only 1 FTE. So, and so everybody, we are all making sacrifices. So thank you. Any other comments or questions before I move on to the final discussion of tonight? All right. So thank you for everybody. Thank you to everybody. We are making. We are moving ahead of schedule, so we have plenty of time for budget committee discussion. So, we will now move to a structured committee discussion. Let's start by opening this discussion with a continuation of the May 4th meeting. The following topics are still outstanding: library funding and use of reserve. So anybody want to start with Councilor Schlack? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I recall, I think this falls under use of reserves, but parks funding, since we paid off the parks bond, looking at transferring that money directly into the, I believe it's the Parks Utility Fund, correct me if I'm wrong there, to help triage the immediate gap that we're seeing. So I'd like to definitely see that amendment made if that's not included in the proposed budget.
Okay. Ethan.
I had a further discussion point on the library budgets. I looked through the budget book and the various department budgets, and I have somewhat of a proposal, and procedurally I'm not sure of the proper, I mean, I can talk it out, but I'm not sure if this is the right time, or if we're just kind of agenda setting for the budget committee discussion portion of the meeting now.
Yeah, we're in the budget committee meeting, so please feel free to share your thought, and we can talk it out.
Okay, sure. So, like I commented during last week's meeting, I do, and the additional information from this week's meeting has been really helpful. I do still feel that the proposed library cuts are disproportionate. And as I also commented last time, I believe the most productive way to address that is to come with specific recommendations And I saw in the written comments that some had done that, and I've also sketched out something here that I'd like to share. So this proposal that I'm outlining here is to cut the proposed library cuts in half to about 976,000. And I proposed 3 separate pay-fors for this. When I was looking at how to pay for that, 967,000 or 976,000, I first looked at other departments with budgets of at least $10 million in FY26 adopted budgets, because I didn't want to exacerbate any kind of proportional problem. And so that left me looking at 3 other departments: community development, public works, and police. So I then identified the only one of those with a proposed budget increase, the community development department. And so I proposed to eliminate the budget increase and instead hold the community development budget steady at 11.9 million. I'm sorry, 11.19 million. And then that left 2 other departments with FY26 budgets of at least 10 million, public works and police. And that also left $282,000 left to pay for the reduction in the library cut. So it's a little bit of a blunt approach, but what I would propose is a weight average distribution of that 282,000 among public works and police based on their FY26 budgets, which puts the public works burden, so to speak, of that remaining $282,000 pay for at 56%, or 684,000 in additional reduction, and the police budget at 44% of that remaining pay for, or 381,000 in additional cuts. So if my math is right, this would represent year-over-year decreases in the public works and police budgets of 1.8% and 1.3% respectively. And that's compared to the already proposed cuts of 1.4% and 0.9%. So it would just be increasing those a little bit. So while budget cuts are almost never comfortable for any department, I don't want to cut police, I don't want to cut public works, I don't want to cut community development. But I thought that this seemed like a little more of a modest and fair proposal. So a lot of words and a lot of numbers there, and I obviously have a spreadsheet here, but I wanted to offer that proposal, and I'm curious to hear what others think.
Okay, thank you. Let me call people in order that saw their hand came up. So Aaron, you are next.
Oh, finance director.
Go ahead. No, sorry. Hold on. Director Kane, you have.
If staff could have an opportunity to review the feasibility of that proposal, staff would greatly appreciate that. Because one of the concerns I have just at the beginning is looking at the proposed budget for community development itself. I mean, you can see that they have quite a few different revenue streams. And so if we're looking at the general fund portion of their revenue streams, that did have a decrease. Most of the increase from year over year is due to other funding sources. So I just would be appreciative if staff could have a chance to evaluate the feasibility of that.
Yeah, definitely. And also, you're pointing out that it's not, they don't get money all from the same places, right? It's not all general fund. So this cut will be, yeah, I would appreciate you coming up with some sort of analysis for that proposal. Yeah, thank you.
Additionally, for Public Works, that would also mean a reduction could only happen in Parks and Recreation. None of the other Public Works
Right.
Department
Yeah.
could have a reduction.
Because it's general fund only. Yeah. All right, so sorry to interrupt you, Aaron. You can go ahead now.
No, that's okay. That actually helps clarify some of the things that I was going to ask. So I actually have a follow-up for Ethan because I would like to notice a little bit more on that. So with the numbers that you had, can I just ask what the overall numbers were coming from Public Works and Police and was it Community Development? Was that the third? Can I just get the
Yeah,
numbers from
Community
those that
Development.
added up to the 976,000, please?
So to cover the 976,000, I essentially had 694,000 coming from community development because that was their budget increase. And I hear everything Eric said. That was very helpful. 158,000 from Public Works and 123,000 from Police.
Okay, Council President Wolf.
I'm sorry, sorry, one more, can you just repeat the Police one more time? You said 100.
123,000.
Okay. So are we going to have, I just want to clarify, are we going to have more time at the end of next budget meeting to discuss this and other options in addition? Or should, if I have other suggestions, should I be making those now?
You can, yeah, I don't think we're going to make any decision tonight because I'm,
okay.
Yeah, I want to have a better understanding of where those money come from and if that even possible.
Okay.
And if you have any proposal, I would strongly suggest you send them to Eric because, you know, again, I'm
Okay.
at least I am personally, I'm not good at making decision on the fly. I would like to see analysis being performed and read about it first. So,
Sure.
yeah.
I
So
would like to go ahead and voice one though. This is not to override what Ethan's is. This is just a second option.
Okay.
I would like to make a recommendation that $165,202 be reallocated from unfilled vacancies within the police department and be reallocated to the proposed FTE reduction within the library to cover the 1.4 proposed FTE removal. That was what was, according to the Q&A that we had last time, the 165,202 was the library amount, and there was over 600,000 available, excuse me, in unfilled police, which is 27.5% about. So again, this is a second recommendation. We can talk about this more later on, but I wanted to get that out there so people can start thinking about that as well. Thank you.
Okay. So Eric, you got that? Okay. So staff will perform those analysis and present to the committee later. Okay. Council President Wolf, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mayor, for requesting. I am not good at an audio only with a lot of numbers. So I really appreciate having all that sent to Eric to do the analysis of what makes sense. And then all of us can kind of process what the spreadsheets say. But thank you, Ethan, and for proposing. My wondering is, as bigger numbers were put out, I really appreciated the direct costs charts because I feel like that's what we're really talking about. And a lot of the other dollars are the indirect allocations and how we take central services and push out. So if we're really having a conversation about what's getting cut at the library or suggested at the police to focus on what the direct costs are, and maybe I'm wrong in that methodology in my head, but I really appreciate the charts. It helped me focus on key issues. And my final wondering is, you know, the police is a 24/7 department, and I just wonder if everyone has a full understanding of the services that they provide to our city, the demands of that, And the fact that our goal is 5, we're at 3 during the day. And if there needs to be a better kind of leveling of what the police services, how they're delivered, needs to be provided. So just a thought, consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Schlack first and then Jeff. So Councillor Schlack.
Thank you. And with regards to library funding, I just wanted to disclose to the committee that I did put an agenda item request for council in to discuss library services and funding, because I think this has reached a point with the level of discussion by the committee that council needs to provide some policy guidance on what it sees as its expected service levels and funding options for the library for future fiscal years. So that's obviously not going to happen before this budget process has concluded, but I think it's an important discussion, similar to how council provided policy guidance on Parks and Rec funding earlier this year. So I just wanted to disclose that I think this needs to be an ongoing discussion by council so we can review and reassess what essential functions and core mission of the Tigard Public Library are, what the minimum expectations for service like days and hours open are to meet community needs, and what sustainable funding models could be available to council moving forward. I think this is a long-term discussion that we need to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, I can't turn my camera on. Hopefully you can hear me. I want to kind of keep going on Ethan's direction here, because I'm very much a supporter of the library. I think as I kind of read through this budget, especially today on the community development side, when I look at planning and I think about the effort we're putting forth to move areas of Tigard forward, and then I look at our structural deficit and I think about the people we're leaving behind. I think that's a big miss. And so from my perspective, I think the police budget is fine. I think we should probably keep our community safe. However, I look at this planning and I wonder, this planning, they didn't take any headcount cuts, and I know they have a lot of work on their agenda, but so much of that looks like it's catering to new development and not to the existing Tigard residents. And I think that's a myth that we probably need to focus on. And so I would like community development to come back and say, hey, if we move a couple of headcount out of our group, these are the long-term plannings that we would have to punt. I think that would be a useful discussion topic. I know some of them are mandated by law, but some of them are voluntary, I think. And I think it would be nice to know what is flexible and what those trade-offs might be, because I think I've heard more than a couple of times in last week's and this that development isn't paying for itself and that we are in this structural deficit. And so that is going to need to get resolved by the city council. But until it does, I think we need to keep the most fragile among us safe. And I think that taking away the services, the one place in our community that is the place where the socioeconomics mingle, to take that away is a real disservice to our existing population. So I support it. I don't think a straight out axing everybody's budget the same amount is necessarily the right approach. I think we do need to see the trade-offs, but I would like to see what planning could do with a little bit of reduced headcount.
So do you have any specific proposal in mind, Jeff, that you'll be providing, or just
I guess I would propose a direct shift of the headcount loss from the library into the planning department.
Got it. All right. Thank you. And staff can
And
provide
we'll
that
get back to
analysis
the
as well.
long-range planning efforts.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. And Councillor Shaw.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm actually very concerned about this discussion because it seems like it's just, to be fair, we're just going to indiscriminately cut across the board. And there, as mentioned, Director of Finance Eric King had mentioned, there's different funding elements that fund different services. So just want to voice that concern. Second is planning has proposed a vacancy with elimination of a project planner. So again, it's not, we're not pitting library against every other department. It's just a very difficult budget season, and we're trying to get to the accurate numbers to see how we can impact each department less, and that includes the library. And so, and similar to Councilor Schlack, I was going to mention the same of just, I think we do need to have a policy discussion about the library, and I still would like to see us explore an IGA with Washington County for the services provided that are on the social services side within the library. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shaw. I don't know which one. Bill, you go first.
I don't really have a proposal.
Your mics, turn on your mic, please. Thank you.
I don't really have a proposal or question. I have more of a request, and it's partially because, yeah, Ethan, I'm sure, has got it. It's just all those numbers, I really need to see that.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was hoping to make clear, because I don't always see it in the budget, or at least I'm not finding it. When we're looking at position reductions, so FTE headcount reductions, right? No, position reductions. How many of those positions are open and how many of them are filled? What is a true headcount reduction and what is we're eliminating an open position? Second thing that I would like to see is on those open positions, how long have those positions been open? Is it 6 months, 6 years, 2 years? It'd be really good to know that. And then just one final clarification, just again, this is more for the next meeting. I was concerned about the police department talking about open FTEs in the police department because there was a police levy that's, I believe, funded a very specific number of headcount. And I didn't know if there was any kind of constraints on if we reduce the money here, we're actually running into problems with a publicly voted upon levy. So those are my asks.
Good. Yusuf.
Bill actually nailed what I was going to ask about the positions, but I will just reaffirm my position with the library as well. I think most importantly to me is that we, not saying that we indiscriminately cut across the board, but make sure that, the most vulnerable amongst us don't fall completely out of the frame as we do the budget. And I think between the houseless liaison and social services coordinator, the boots on the ground person, that would go a long way, as well as the library. So I just want to see the proposed trade-offs that Eric and his team are going to work up before we make any decisions. So thank you.
Okay. Councilor Robbins.
Thank you. And I appreciate what Councilor Shaw said about, being very careful about what kind of cuts we're making and not just across the board, to be fair. I also was going to point out that community development is cutting a project planner, so not a small position. As far as current openings versus layoffs, I do think that's important to a certain extent. We recently lost our assistant, so that's technically an open position, but just because we knew this was coming, she had a great opportunity and moved on, and we decided not to fill that. But that doesn't mean that all the work that she did is just, that's falling on someone else. And so if we are understaffed, it's still, other people are doing more than one FTE worth of work, or projects will take longer, as somebody said today. Some of the projects that we were hoping to do will get put behind. As far as just saying that we should cut community development, let's remember that community development is part of how the city gets money, right? Through permits, through business development, which then those businesses pay taxes. So some of these things are services, and some of them are helping us to continue to develop. And if we don't have the money coming in through taxes, through new businesses, through new permits and stuff, then we won't have any money to spend on the more vulnerable people. So we do have to balance for this. And some of the things that we have are must-haves, and some are, I really, really want it, and some are, this is nice to have. And it's always, always difficult, whether it's your home budget or a city budget or, even bigger, that it's always difficult to figure out what to cut. But we have to make sure that we're looking at things apples to apples, looking at the sources of income for the different departments, and make sure that we're being careful.
Thank you. And tonight I haven't heard from a few members, so I just want to call on you, but you don't have to say anything if you don't want to say. So Councilor Anderson, do you have anything to, no? Okay. Kelly, anything to add?
People keep making the comments that I have written down right
Oh.
before I make them, so I feel really
Good.
good. But
Yeah,
I did just want to make a general comment, and I don't know, it's not helpful, I'm sure, but I'm really, really proud that we live in a community where everybody cares so much about making sure that the most vulnerable people are protected.
Mm-hmm.
However that happens, however that manifests, I think it's important to honor that we're all here in this space trying to do that together. So that's my hippie kumbaya moment for the day.
I think that's a good reminder of, even if we disagree on how we get there, we all agree on what we're doing here, right? So we all want to take care of each other. So thank you for that sentiment. And Councillor Gudusi, you have anything to add?
A lot of people have already talked about trying to find ways to help support the library if possible. One thing, if there was a way to do it, even partially helping fund the backyard habitat, that's something that I've been passionate about. And they've done a cost analysis as well that they had sent me. I thought they sent it to everyone, but if not, I can have that sent over to the group as well. So it seemed like a fiscally appropriate thing to do with even partial funding.
Yeah, I have not received it. So if you can forward to Eric, he can share with the group. Jeff, any other thoughts?
Sorry, I did want to kind of make a follow-up on the comment of the revenue kind of coming in from development, and I think it's worth saying a little thing because I see the desire because of the increased tax revenue on appropriately valued homes. But that doesn't change the fact that we got this structural deficit, and after that, they're limited to a 3% tax increase while our costs, the costs associated with city government are growing faster than that. So, the challenge we have is until we fix that structural deficit, the more accelerated development, the bigger that gap becomes. And we're already hearing the park systems strained on new park developments. And these are all things we want, but I think that the structural gap we have is going to make things worse unless we resolve it. And so that's, I'm not saying stop. I'm not saying stop all development, but I don't think we have a real accurate cost of what it's bringing and what it's costing us. Just to be, and I think that gap from the tax revenue increase limitation is just, you're never going to get away from it unless we fix our structural problem.
Thank you for that comment.
That would be my comment.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to a little bit further to today's proposal. We talk about community development, obviously. Also, we are talking about central service. Oh, I'm sorry. Derek, do you have any further comment about the library?
Just a general addition to the conversation, questions for Eric. I think you'd probably be the best person to answer it is, to what extent do we consider in the projections, if we were to experience some sort of market downturn or a housing type crisis where there were to be, let's say, a raft of reassessments of properties, which could even further decline the amount that we bring in revenues from a property tax standpoint? Is that a reasonable thing for us to consider as part of this discussion?
Apologies. It's a bit of a difficult question to answer because, again, it's a bit of reading the tea leaves. From a forecast standpoint, we know the current assessed value compared to real market value is, I believe, in Washington County, roughly about 54%. So it would require quite a significant downturn, like a catastrophic downturn, for that to have the level of impact that you're referring to if there was a market adjustment to housing prices. Is that the question that you're asking?
It is. So something akin to 2008 or something like that, right?
It would have to be something comparable, if not worse.
So if and it's not intended to be a leading question, it's more just going into the reserves. If we do start relying more heavily on those reserves, it does leave us potentially susceptible to a sort of black swan type of event that we may as a committee want to consider. it sounds like. There's a question in there, I promise.
No, that'd be true. Reserves are meant to be used for those type of events. If it was something unexpected, such as the 2008 housing crisis, I mean, I don't know if I would say that was unexpected, but some people argue that was.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. Sorry I missed you earlier. James, you have something to say?
Yeah, thank you. So this is partially in response to Ethan's proposal earlier, because realistically, I'll probably be the one doing the analysis behind some of this, and so I just want a little bit of clarification. And I may sound stupid here and be a bit of a wet blanket, but so as Eric sort of proposed and showed on the slides earlier, minus any of those interdepartmental service costs, the library's reductions were closer to the $450 to $500K range. And I believe Ethan's proposal is to reallocate over $900,000 from the library to other departments. So I'm just wondering where we're going to come up with that extra $450,000 to reallocate outside of a reduction that isn't even half of what is being proposed. And if we do see reductions to other departments to offset those library reductions, it is not a one-for-one. So if we see $1 reduced out of our central services, it's closer to 49 cents reductions to the corresponding department that is paying into that. And so I'm just making sure that even if we restored all $450,000 of the proposed library cuts, everything else aside, we're still going to see libraries seeing a $1.5 million reduction to their budget based on all of the other cuts throughout the city. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm tasked with doing and make sure we are on the same page with that.
Ethan?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think I think you highlight a key point there on the issue of clarity, because I think maybe that is where a lot of this discussion is coming from. I think, well, I for one will admit I don't fully understand the difference between like the $1.9 million cut that's like pretty obvious in the line items of the budget and the kind of more what I'm hearing to be a more realistic interpretation of that cut in that's really less than $500,000. I'm not quite understanding what that distinction is. And I suspect, without wanting to put words in anybody's mouth, that maybe a lot of other people are feeling the same way, considering the volume of commentary we've had on the topic. So, yeah, maybe it's just an education piece, and maybe maybe that would be a good longer topic for the next budget committee meeting next week to really try to get more widespread understanding of what that means, because I think I was going off of 1.9 million, and I think maybe a lot of other people were too. So maybe to kind of better understand what the real financial impact of that is, if it's closer to 426,000, would be helpful.
Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
If I could have a moment to maybe respond and clarify what the difference is between the two. If we were to look at any given department page, so you'll see that in any given department, the budget under budget categories, it's broken out by personnel services, material services, capital outlay, and interdepartmental services. So your personnel services, that is your human capital, your cost of staff. Materials are like the direct materials and professional services that the department uses, and the capital outlay is any purchase of hard goods. Interdepartmental services is their proportionate share of paying for administrative services. And And so that is not something that is within the department's control. They would get charged that amount regardless of what other changes are happening in their budget. In simplistic terms, there is some nuance there because some of those cost drivers would change, as I showed you about how the cost allocation plan works, where if you have more FTEs or if you have less FTEs, your proportionate share does increase or decrease based on that. But at a high level, though, it doesn't move the needle very much. It would still relatively be about the same in terms of what their proportionate interdepartmental services are. And so that, again, those are funds in order to pay for all of your administrative services because they don't. The reason why the city presents the budget in that way is to show what is like your total true cost of running a specific community service. So that you're capturing things like, the cost of maintaining facilities, the cost of doing all the financial reporting, run AP for any given department. So you can report on that as a department. Some cities don't report their budget in that way, and that they only report direct services and materials. And so if you are doing comparing to other jurisdictions, some jurisdictions do only report on direct costs at the department level. Does that help clarify those two, or did I muddy the water even further?
I do think that helps. Thank you. And I was looking at the library's budget by category as you were speaking and seeing the interdepartmental services representing almost all of that proposed, right?
Yeah, can I speak to that real quick? So basically, if any of the proposed cuts that the library were to have made themselves were restored, the library department would still see that $1.5 million reduction regardless of whatever decisions they put forward as a department to cut in fiscal year 2027. So that reduction that you're seeing in their budget is simply due to the reduction of others' budgets within the city.
Okay. Thank you. That is helpful. I think another way to look at it is we're obviously talking about the money, but the human impact is the loss of the position seems like one of the key impacts. And that is in the personnel, that's within the 426,000, right? The personnel services category.
That is correct.
Okay.
One of the things I would clarify on some of those reductions, and Director Halstead is welcome to respond if she would like, but I would just recap one of the things that came on her slides. So 2 of the vacancies within the library's proposed budget that's being eliminated are related to a larger effort county-wide to sustain library funding across Washington County libraries. And so that has been agreed upon by all the library city managers across Washington County. And that is to centralize the collection services so that the purchasing of library materials is handled at a central office rather than at a individual library location. So I just want to provide that distinction on why that proposal was included.
Okay, that's helpful. So it's really just the community engagement position that is
there's
discretionary, so to speak, at this point.
In terms of what is not captured in there, it's 1.4 FTE.
Okay.
Yeah, and as Library Director Bernard, during her presentation, mentioned, my understanding is that any more cut would impact library service, but so far, library still be open the same as before, right? But any more cut will have impact.
From an hours of operation standpoint, the library would still continue to operate at 64 hours.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
Hi there, everybody, again.
Halstead Bernard, Library Director. I did note that any further cuts to FTE would impact open hours, but I also noted that there were some significant services that we are providing currently that would not be provided. And that specifically, we're talking about with the adult services librarian cut, that impacts programming and events, and with the teen librarian cut, that also impacts teen programming and events. And with the social services coordinator being cut, that means that none of that work will be done at the library at all. So there are cuts to library services in this proposed budget.
Got it. Thank you. Councillor Schlack.
Thank you, Mayor. One quick question for the Finance Director. Which topics remain for next week before we get too in the weeds of slicing and dicing this budget with red ink? What topics are next week?
So for the agenda, we do have the agenda published now for next week, but it is utilities, infrastructure, which includes CIP, and redevelopment.
Thank you. I'd like to hear those topics before we get too far down the track of trying to amend things on the fly. Personally, I'd also like to, if we're going to look at maintaining one limited duration position at the library, look at reviewing all of the limited duration positions that are being eliminated, because I recognize that IT, I believe, has one as well. And I think it would be important to be fair across departments, that if we're going to keep limited duration in one, we would look at trying to keep limited duration across the board, because that was the rationale, my understanding, for that particular budget decision. And then, having done a couple of these budget cycles, I would really encourage my fellow committee members to talk in terms of what their priorities are for the budget. We've talked a lot about proportionality and started throwing a lot of numbers around in order to hit proportional cuts across departments, but really budgets are about priorities. I refer everyone to the fiscal year 27 budget priorities that were laid out by our budget officer, Brian Rager. Minimize impacts to police services, maintain current service levels for existing facilities, parks and recreation, and development and permitting, and adjust library services while continuing to meet community needs. If the Budget Committee has alternative priorities it would like to pursue at this time, I would like to hear what those are specifically, as opposed to specific line items that are within the discretion of department directors that people would like to see maintained. And I'd also like to hear if there are actually a majority of committee members that are interested in entertaining certain options, because I haven't heard, even with my own suggestion for triaging parks funding, I haven't technically heard 8 members that are interested in entertaining those ideas further, just to help save everybody, I think, some time over the next meeting and potentially the 4th meeting after it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody want to respond? Go ahead, Councilperson Wolf.
Thank you, Councilor Schlack. And actually, I just want to build on the councilor's comments about with the park funds, that was the one-time dollars, and definitely support, and I said that last week, about supporting parks. What I'm curious about, Eric, is, and also wanting to be fiscally conservative around what's our reserves, in the long run, so that we're being thoughtful there. But of that money, what would be required for parks? What are the levers around that amount that might be some discussion points? That's one-time funds, so we have to really, recognize that. But what are some options around those dollars? And I think that came up last week as well. So hopefully that makes sense. But that doesn't solve a long-run problem, but just kind of have that conversation around those dollars. So, and always just leaving it in reserves, because that's good fiscal policy, is certainly an option as well. So thank you, Mayor.
Any other? Councillor Shaw, you want to jump in? Are you in favor of using the park fund bond money to triage?
I think following Council President Wolf's comment, I have very similar thoughts and feelings about it. So I'd like to see some of the questions that she'd asked answered.
Okay.
But yes.
Okay. All right. So you got those. Okay. So let's move on. Just for tonight's presentation on IT and central services. Any other proposed reduction tonight acceptable? If there are any that are unacceptable, what would you propose as trade-off? Are we okay with all the reduction for tonight's presentation? Okay, seems like everybody's okay. I'm bored with that. All right, so James or Lindsay, would you like to go ahead, Councilor Shaw?
So Mayor, just one point, and Councilor Gudusi had mentioned it, that he'd received an extra analysis on the backyard habitat, and just to make sure that's circulated,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'd like to see that before making a final
Yeah,
decision on that.
yeah, we'll get to that.
It seems
the
like they
final-
were actually listening to this and sent it to Director Kang while we were speaking.
Okay. All right. So he sent it to Eric. So, all right. So Jeff, go ahead.
Thanks. Before we tabled all this and moved on, I did want to follow back and make sure I understood the scope of this $2.4 million housing assistance fund. I understand where it's coming from, and I understand the intent of it. I guess what I'm wondering is during the discussion tonight, it sounded like there's at least a moral commitment to two people, perhaps, and I'm wondering what the scope of that is financially, or do we know, and what would be the plan, and why move that from the reserve fund into the budget now if it's not even projected to be needed? I guess would be my questions on that.
Can we answer that later?
I could make an attempt to answer that question.
Okay, go ahead.
First time. So for the amount that's been budgeted for that program, because the CET funds currently do not have any other obligations for those funds, the entire duration of the contract for that program is budgeted. That is not to say that all of the funds will be spent in this next following year, but as there are no other competing funds, as you will, that is the way that has been allocated, just for flexibility.
For flexibility, but there's not a legal requirement to pull it out of the CET fund and execute, as opposed to keeping it in a reserve should the council decide later the different strategy of acquisition was needed, because things are changing pretty fast in the financial world globally right now.
I think from a legal standpoint, there's never any. I mean, I think that would be an operational decision by the department.
Yeah, Jeff, I agree with that. It's not Budget Committee's purview for operation, so I would leave it at that. All right, Council
Yeah,
President
I mean, our
Wolf.
purview is limited to the line item, correct?
I guess what I'm referring to is whether or not the full amount is implemented or not, or executed on. That would still
Because it rolls up into the total budget number, is what you're saying.
Yes, it does.
I understand.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Is it within the purview of the budget committee to recommend changes to depletion of funds? Is it within our purview to recommend certain funds be modified to greater or lesser extents?
If we're talking about from a funding standpoint, then yes, that would be within the budget committee purview. I think the distinction I would make is if we're talking about how a department chooses when to execute on an approved budget amount, that would be, or contractually obligated amount, that would be an operational decision.
Operational. Understand. All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Council President Wolf.
I just wanted to give clarity that on the events. So Nicole, what you proposed is that we would have 0 events funded. So I just wanted to sit with that for a second. Okay, I just wanted to, for the record, 0. So, okay. I'm wrestling with that, to be honest, that we don't have not one event for our community. I don't have an answer right now, other than problem with that. Thank you.
Ethan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to respond briefly to the question about if we are okay with the proposed cuts. I kind of feel the same about that this week that I did last week, which is that I'm not really sure how to answer that at this point. I didn't want my non-response to be interpreted as a implicit approval of anything. I'm of the understanding that that won't happen until we vote on the budget. So I guess I'm not ready to opine at this point on if we're okay with the proposed budget cuts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. All right, so James, would you like to tell us what you have on your list of questions you're working on?
Sure, I would. Okay, so yeah, please correct me if I'm missing something or speaking incorrectly. I believe we started with if we have metrics to track businesses in the economic development pipeline and where within that pipeline they all sit. And I know that's on Sambo's record there. There was a comment about fast-tracking River Terrace 2.0. We didn't quite get the entire comment or question on that, so we were going to review the recording, but if someone had additional clarification on that now, if not, we'll review the recording for more information. We had another comment from Jeff about how it would be helpful to see the planning projects in the scope of future development and what these projects might cost the community members. Also from Jeff to be helpful to see the proportion of external resources compared to internal resources for future planning projects, i.e. the River Terrace 2.0, Downtown Reimagined, et cetera. We had a request for a chart of FTE reductions by department with the additional detail of whether or not they're vacant or filled and for how long. We had a comment for the inclusion of the Parks GL bond transfer to be included in the proposed budget, or if it was included in the proposed budget, clarification on that. We have a request to review Ethan's proposal to add funding to the library and proportionately look at what that impact might be between CD, PD, and PW, the other departments that are above $10 million in proposed budgets for fiscal year 2027. As well as Aaron's proposal to add funding to the library. There was a request for CD to talk about what would happen if CD were to lose FTE due to future planning projects and shifting that library FTE loss into the planning department of CD. Additionally, and in conjunction with when losing FTE reductions, again, how many are open or how many are filled. The clarification around the police levy FTE funding and whether or not if we were to lose FTE within police funding, would that be out of compliance with the police levy language? Some general comments around ways to find a way to fund backyard habitat and additional conversation around options for the one-time dollars from the Parks GO bond. And what that allocation split transfer might look like and what it can fund. Anything off of anybody's head? Yes.
Thank you, James. Excellent summary. One additional one was the development resource, perhaps just some context of in River Terrace 1.0 and recognizing it has to be transparent and, you know, it's a helpful resource, not something that's trying to influence. But for a development resource from the development community for River Terrace 2.0 as a potential.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, so thank you all for attending to this evening's meeting. We will recess for today and resume at our next scheduled meeting on Monday, May 18th at 6 p.m. Good night, Tiger.